Hey, Allie.
Hey.
And hello, listener.
Hi.
Or listeners. If you're listening to this in a group of people, that's
Group.
awesome.
Group podcast listening. That's interesting.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people have been having listening parties to our podcast.
Oh, for ours. Wow, that's
Weekly
amazing.
groups who get together on like Sunday or Monday nights and just listen to our podcast.
They wait till it drops.
Yeah, they wait till it drops. Also, that's entirely a lie. I've never heard of anyone doing that. But some people do listen to it on a road trip.
Yeah,
and
with
so,
other people.
And there might be other people in the car. Mm-hmm. And maybe you're an entrepreneurial mom and you've got kids in the car right now and they don't want to listen to this. They want to listen to, I don't know what kind of stuff.
Paw Patrol.
Paw Patrol. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
They want to listen to Paw Patrol.
I don't know if it's like a song or...
So the best thing you can do is give your kids an iPad and then let them put headphones in, and then you can kind of get into this stuff in peace.
That's a great
We
tactic.
had a client in the office this week who is just telling us that she got into this problem with her kids who were interrupting her Wonder Jam cast listening experience.
Oh, yeah, you can't do that, kids. Sorry.
Today we have our friend Rebecca. Mm-hmm. She's on the podcast. You might have seen her on the internet. Her handle is Eating Books.
Yes.
And she kind of tells the story of how she came up with that name, how she got started in blogging, and where that all came from.
She's just like one of the best people.
I was thinking about this because I knew we were recording this, and I thought she is so authentic in herself.
Yeah.
And the things that she does that are funny, it's funny to her. She thinks it's hilarious.
Yes.
The things that she does that
she promotes.
Yeah. The brands that she works with, even the way that she's smart and strategic is kind of just how she is.
Yeah. Like you guys, she turned down a free washer and dryer. Keep listening to find out why. I don't know if I would turn down a free washer and dryer. Ours squeaks so loud, we need a new one.
Yeah, we do. If we can get a sponsor to hit us up and send us a washer.
Yeah,
and dryer.
Whirlpool, where you at?
We really need a washer, though, specifically.
I just don't want to spend money on it.
No, it is not fun.
It's in our basement. I don't see it.
But Rebecca comes on. She's awesome. The other thing I like about, I enjoyed talking to her about was she takes care of small businesses kind of like we do.
Yeah, that's so true.
And so I know her pricing and her packages are kind of built to work with the same type of companies that we work with. And so there's a couple of people that we've worked with that she's working with now.
Yeah, it works really well.
Yeah, and so having people who are kind of all taking care of the same folks is a ton of fun.
She handles a lot of writing and social media management and, social media growth for clients. And what I really love is that she talks about how she got into this industry just by doing what she loves. So if you have something that you enjoy doing, even if it means being on Instagram, I think this will be really encouraging to you because you can make a career out of it.
Truth. So here's Rebecca.
Rebecca, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you.
We are excited to talk to you about stuff that you do, starting as a blogger, getting your Instagram started, and now you help other people do a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited because Rebecca is one of the few people, and not that we don't know any others, but there's a lot of folks that we know who work in the social media space and help brands do marketing, and a lot of what we see people do can come across as very inauthentic or boring, or just like people use their social accounts to just essentially post mini advertisements every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And none of that works, none of that's useful, and a lot of agencies or people who work selling social media services can kind of sell that stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of business owners don't understand that that's garbage. And what we've seen Rebecca do like real stuff that's actually useful. She works with a bunch of clients who we either did branding or photography or websites for in the past, which is cool. So I kind of trust the way she approaches all of that.
Thank you.
I'm into it. So let's talk about how you got started in social media, and then we'll jump kind of into specifics, what you've seen work or not work, or what kind of bad advice most people get.
Well, the funny thing for me, I feel like I've never intentionally gone into anything. I've happened to
there.
fall into something, which I think is great, honestly, because that means that I'm just doing things I like, and I just happen to get to where I want to go. So, that's a happy accident for sure. For myself, I would say like everything kind of started when I started the blog, which was 2014.
Okay.
I was working at a bank at the time, and I was a loan officer and universal banker. And I started that job where before I had worked at a tea shop, and I was super chill. I consider myself a pretty laid back person. So when I started there, I kind of worked my way up. And by the time, I left there, when I started out with 3 cups of tea a day, I was now at 6 cups of coffee a day, I'd completely forgotten that. So I was very high strung, and I felt like I needed some kind of creative outlet. So for me, I started the blog as this sort of escape from that.
Okay.
And then from there, my boyfriend ended up getting a job transfer to Boston. Okay. So I had this decision of, do I stay in this job that I kind of, I liked who I worked with, but I hated the actual job?
Yeah.
Or do I kind of try this new adventure in Boston? So I ended up quitting, just kind of following him. And it didn't work out there, clearly. But, I feel like everything is sort of, it's such a cliche, but I mean, it kind of, everything just kind of works out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
So I ended up going there, kind of taking it easy and focusing a little on the blog. So I was able to, and I guess I should explain the blog.
Oh, yeah.
It's essentially started with the idea of literary food, so fictional food, and creating it and then bringing it to life and taking photographs of it. So I would do these blog posts where I could explore the text and examine food and its role in books. And it's always kind of fun to see the sort of metaphorical work at play.
Yeah.
So that was something I focused on in Boston just because I was kind of aimless.
Okay.
And then when I returned, I didn't want to have to go back to the bank, which I did for a couple of months. And it was the worst thing I could have done, really. Yeah. But at that point, I was just like, you need to start fresh. You need to do something else. So I was like, I'm going to go back to school. So I went back to school. And in my first semester, I got an internship at the Literacy Council. Okay. And I did fundraising and social media there. And at the very end of it, I was like, you guys are a 45-year institution in Columbus. Nobody's heard of you. You do one thing every year, which is this big gala. And it's what they use to basically fund the rest of their year on top of grants. So I was like, you need to start doing crowdfunding and more social media work so that people can see you. Yeah. So I pitched this proposal and they liked it and they hired me on as a freelancer. And from there, it was just sort of like, oh, this is a cool little side gig. That's great. Yeah. And then I gained clients just as word of mouth because I had my eating books stuff. And that was something that was sort of organically growing. And the nice part about that is it was sort of like a portfolio of sorts. Yeah. So that when I would talk to potential clients, I did have one client under my belt. And then it was like, well, this is the kind of thing I can do for you. And this is the benefit of having this platform of my own that I can cross promote you and all this. So it's been a boon to my business for sure, because I've never gotten everything. Clients that I have right now have just all been word of mouth by my Instagram, which is great, but odd. I
More
guess.
of a personal connection to everyone that walks.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the great part about that is, when you have a meeting with a client, you really want to put them at ease that you know what you're doing and they trust you. Yeah. So my hope is that if they're already following me, they kind of get a feel for my personality or how I am. Yeah. So that trust is sort of already there. And then when we talk and meet in person, I can sort of set their mind at ease and assure them I can do this professionally
talk process
as well.
and talk more of the
I think we find it so useful to have all of our stuff out in the world so that when people come in here for a meeting for some reason, they know if they like us or not before we start doing that. It's not like there's not secrets. There's not going to be surprised by something down the road.
Right. And I think for you guys especially, it just as your brand, your personal branding is such a reflection on what you can do for your clients. Like everything that I've seen, not to kiss your asses, but everything that I've seen come out.
No, that's good. I like
just
this.
Always well, I mean, it's just always been top-notch quality, and you can tell the difference, from before and after.
Well, I even feel that having your own account, it really allows you to, like you said, do the things you love to do. So everything that I feel like I put out as our personal quote brands, it's nothing really is an advertisement because you're like, this is just a project that I
it's not calculated. You're just doing.
Well, we started backwards I moved here in 2008. Allie moved here in 2009. We got married, recession, and we just were didn't know anybody in the city, and we just used social media to make friends. Yeah. And so it was really just I'm just gonna be myself a lot, and then the people who are cool with that can show up. Yeah. And we've just kept doing that till now, and That's
That
kind
works
of how it
though.
goes.
Yeah.
Like
And
100%.
And the same is still true now. I mean, I've really had to weigh the options of, I don't want to work with this person because I don't like them. And running a business and being able to pay my bills and the people who work here. But there's still something very true to, if someone follows us, whether they're following our business account or one of us personally, we often don't get someone who walks through the door who doesn't like vibe with us, just because I don't think the people who we don't want to work with are following along.
Yeah.
But that's always been like the hardest thing is like, I remember talking to a client 2 years ago on the phone and just saying, we like being able to go get drinks with our clients. We like to be friends with them. The question is how long can that stay true?
Right.
You know?
And I feel like it's funny because now that I've been doing this for a little while and I have worked with a variety of different clients and I kind of know, it's like you have to kind of go with this gut sense of if it's going to work or not. I typically have, as far as contracts go, a trial period. Okay. And a lot of that has always been explained as, you know, seeing if I'm the right fit for you. And honestly, it's seeing if you're the right fit for me too. Because I feel like I've worked with so many people now where I was like, this is not going to work. Like after 3 months, usually I can tell after the first month that it's not going to work.
What are some characteristics that you know immediately or red flags that it's not going to work?
Good question.
Cool. Well, I think that for me especially, I don't want the client to be unhappy with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I want there to be open dialogue. I want there to be open communication, but that doesn't mean I want somebody breathing down my neck. That doesn't mean I want to be micromanaged. Correct. If there is an understanding on the outset of how the contract should go, I want it to be followed. I want it to be something where it's like, this is what's happening and we're both on the same page and this is it. Yeah. But I've had, certain times where it's like, I feel like it's overbearing or it's too much for too little or I feel like I'm, I guess, essentially micromanaged. I think is that the best
Is it like
term?
A lot of emails? Is it like they're logging in at the same time?
Sort of like a constant updates kind of a thing. Yeah. Where it's like, I absolutely want to make sure we're on the same page and in the loop. But if it gets to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to be giving you the same information that I just gave you. Like, we cannot go beyond this. It becomes a hassle and it becomes less of a rewarding relationship. Yeah. So I think at that point, it's sort of like, okay, this is...
Allie, what about you? We had a conversation yesterday as a team, and Michael was like, "Oh, we should record this," and it was all about like
red flags. Yeah.
What are we were starting to like put on paper our gut.
Yeah.
Those like we have strong gut feelings, and we had an inquiry that came through that a friend said that one of our friends referred us to, and what was true is they probably saw our friend tag us on the internet, and so it came into our email inbox feeling like, oh, this friend said you should go work with them. Mm-hmm. But then when we connected back with the friend, they're like, oh, don't work with that person. She's crazy. And we were like, oh my gosh, we had all these red flags, but your name at the bottom of the thing was the only reason we thought, this must be good. Yeah. Because she would never send us crazy stuff. And we find out it was. And we were like, gosh, our gut was right. How can we better describe that? Or like accurately share amongst our team or each other. Like this is some of the things that we like to look out for. So for you, what do you think, Allie?
So for me, it's being very intentional with your time. So if you come to me and I can tell that you haven't sat down to think about what you need, you fire off 4 emails in a row, you don't have the ability to sit down and just be like, okay, what is it that I need? How can I write this email concisely? How can I form full sentences? I can tell immediately, even just how someone writes, that I'm not going to want to get updates from them because I'm like, I don't even understand what this says. Yeah. If that's the case, then like I might be willing to jump on a phone with you. But if you are like overpowering the conversation and going off track and just really not being concise and clear, then that's like my biggest red flag because I'm going to be the point person. I'm going to be the one that's spending time talking to you.
And the crazy part too is sometimes it's like you'll have these red flags but you'll either make excuses for them or you'll ignore it. Yeah. And that's something I've definitely been guilty of. And I feel like I should have followed my instinct because it ended up biting me in the ass for sure.
Yeah, and its money isn't worth it.
No.
Number one, we just did Upgrade Your Side Hustle workshop, and we had a panel, and everybody we asked like biggest regret of lesson learned was there was this big project I worked with that I shouldn't have worked with.
Even if it
I
paid
knew
well,
it was
yeah.
bad, but it paid well.
Yeah.
I did it. It was
Moments
still
of
wasn't worth it.
desperation.
Yeah. And actually, it's a really good motivation to not be desperate.
It's true.
Whether it's like, hey, I'm going to just make this financial sacrifice this month so I don't have to take this project on, or like understanding your cash flow and like not squandering like money. You know, I think that's actually a huge motivation for us.
You
Go
go.
ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I would say the last red flag for me is not having direct connection to the client, or it's really changing my expectation or the goal of the project. And so I have found some of our least rewarding work is when there's a middleman and we're working with the middleman and then they're working with the client. And I don't think it's impossible. For 4 years, I worked with a few brands that were bigger who have a middleman, but it's not fulfilling.
And a middleman in our scenario is often
like a PR company, marketing.
Yeah, like a larger website company that's hiring us to do photos,
Yeah.
or a developer who's working with someone else who's asking us to design something.
Yeah, so I don't have direct connection. I don't understand the goals. I don't present my work. And so again, it's not that I can't do that work. It's just I'm at the point in my life where I want to wake up being excited about my work.
Right.
You know, my entire 20s, half of it was just doing work just to like get to that point. And so I turned 30 and I'm like, I want to wake up in the morning and be like, yay, I like the stuff that I do. So
I feel like if you can do that, like you're even if it's you have not the most amount of money doing it, that's a success.
I think so much of it is a red flag for me is when we have to sell somebody on the concept, not the on the like if Rebecca's trying to convince someone that social media matters. Like
yeah,
God,
you don't
so
want
I
to
think
do that.
I have 2 spiels every meeting that I have to save one in case I need it, and then I have got my regular spiel. My regular spiel is these are my prices. This is what I can do for you. The regular meeting, which is great. And then I have the spiel where you have to educate the client, and it's not that I'm not willing to do it. Absolutely, I want you to know that it's important and why it's important and all of this. It's just that there's sometimes clients who will start questioning and go, why is your price this? Why do you do this? And I have an explanation for everything. I break it down. This is what I think I deserve an hour. This is what I think I'm worth, and here's why. And I feel like having these things that sort of separate you as a person to work with over someone else, for me, I kind of include this. So eating books, especially having this platform, being able to be like, hey, a lot of people will reach out to different bloggers and whoever and want to promote this. If you sign with me, not only am I the person running your account, which I'm good at it and you should hire me, but on top of this, if you choose this tier or this tier, there's Eating Books cross promotion built into that. So I will do a live takeover. I will do a post every week for you on my my Insta story, story. So kind of trying to put these things in that kind of separate yourself are like the selling points.
I'm not just a vendor.
Yeah. But then having to kind of explain why is sort of it's not that I'm not willing to do it again. Yeah. It's just that sometimes you have to make them realize your value. And that's rough sometimes.
It can be a little taxing, I think, when you go into a relationship. I mean, think about like a friendship or even a romantic relationship. If you're like, this is why I am the best girlfriend for you. And there's
oh God,
there's something that is.
It reminds me of like when you try to break up with me and then I was like telling you that you shouldn't do that. And let
me give you this presentation.
Here's my pros and cons.
That was like in 2007, 6. And
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Well, apparently he convinced
obviously
you.
I'm not. Yeah. Obviously I'm over it.
Yeah, obviously. Anyways.
Question, Rebecca. Favorite social platform?
Oh, Instagram.
Instagram,
you know what? Twitter's getting up there for me. I love Twitter. And it's funny because I started just as Instagram. I was like, Instagram is my place and that's where my people are.
Yeah.
And then I'm noticing all these things where you really can't do certain things on that platform. they've kind of turned it into an Instagram and like Snapchat sort of hybrid now, which is great because you have that option available to you.
Yeah.
But like there are certain things where it's just like you want to talk about something and you can't really do that. I've taken like a screenshot and just written what I want to say, but that doesn't quite vibe as well as like on Twitter.
Yeah.
So conversations are always great because Twitter, that kind of allows you to do that.
Yeah.
And you also get to stay updated on the news and stuff. And it's like, I'm a
That's not
political
fun,
junkie
though,
and it's nice
so.
to be able to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Twitter's like the place where I'm like, I just need to not read so much stuff or I get depressed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's why I quit
for
Facebook
sure.
as a personal thing because I was
I
like,
did
I'm
too.
sick of seeing
I don't need to
all
see
this
some
stuff.
of this. I think Twitter's nice though because I really enjoy lists. I have like my specific lists that I read, and my feed can be a little overwhelming, especially if something horrible is happening in the world or the country. But I do think that this year specifically, and this is getting kind of deep, but I'm struggling more with sharing. Like I like sharing, and when I'm at the point where I finally want to, I have a hard time almost like creating personal content. And I think I've transitioned into making content for my business. And I know that that won't always be the case. Which is, I think, why Twitter right now, I'm like, I don't know what I want to say. And then on Instagram, I can be like, I took a picture. And also share something that I want to say. But I think it's cool that depending on where you're at as a consumer versus creator, those different platforms can like quote feed you in different ways.
And it's weird because like in my case, I feel like I started Instagram and I thought my audience is here. And then I was sort of like, you get to a point where you almost feel like I've mastered this platform. I should find
new
another
challenge.
So for me, I was like, let's try out Twitter. Let's do this. And so what I did is I actually had a personal Twitter account that was just, whatever's on my mind. And then I had Eating Books. And at some point I was just like, one, I didn't want to have to deal with two accounts because I was just like, And at another point, it just became my brand is almost so synonymous with myself that it just didn't make sense. So I was like, well, if I'm my personality behind my brand, there's no reason why I can't do this. There's no reason why I should feel like, oh, I'm going to alienate people if I talk about my political opinions or this and that. And I don't think it's mattered. For me, I feel like especially like in this day and age, I can't shut up about politics right now. It's not.
And I don't want to work with someone who doesn't agree.
Right. And if somebody
me
saw that and go, well, I don't want to
ways,
work with her. I'm like, dude, I don't want
That's
to work with you either. Like, good.
I
Weed it out.
completely agree.
So I feel like for me, having kind of combining it, I actually saw like I was able to get these numbers match my Instagram account as far as audience go, because it's like you are able to connect with people that are like-minded on there and actually have a dialogue.
Yeah.
So that what I try to do sometimes, and I mean I have to think about it, but on Instagram I try to drive a dialogue to get my engagement rate up and just so I can connect with my audience.
Yeah.
But I've found that the best way to actually connect with the people that follow me is on Twitter, because it's you can really talk and get heavy into stuff. So
have you had any experiences where the accessibility or people's opinions has like affected you or felt like a little overwhelming, or have you felt like it's been a really great place to just connect with those that are like-minded?
I would say a little bit of both, because you obviously get like your random troll or whatever on Twitter. But for me especially, I feel like it's nice because the majority of the people that follow me seem to have the same opinions as I do, which doesn't mean that I don't want to have conflicting opinions.
For sure.
Eventually that does come up where it's like this
and
this
it
back
can be
and
an
forth.
actual dialogue.
But for me too, I'm like, I'm not going to engage in this on Twitter. Like if we have a difference of opinion, like we can talk about it, but at some point it's like you, especially like on Facebook even. That's why I quit Facebook, because there's so much stuff where I'm just like, I don't want to do
no
this
way
anymore.
we can change each other's
No,
minds.
like we're just going to be going back and forth. So at some point you just got to throw in the towel. You're done. So for me, I definitely feel like that's true. Like that does come up, but it makes for an interesting conversation, and it does make for a more of a connection. So I think that it's a good thing.
And there's depth to it.
Yeah.
So how do you approach a client wants to work with you? They need help with social. What are some things that you assess, like how their website is performing or looks? Do you talk to them about creating a Twitter account if they haven't? Things like that. What are those initial conversations like?
There's always, for the first time, I always try to, before we even have a meeting, just give them a few things to think about. They don't need to think about a ton before, because they already kind of are contacting me for a reason. So what I tend to try to get them to do is to think about their demographic. Okay. So if they don't have analytics on there, or if they can just kind of activate that just to see, just to get a feel for who their audience is currently, age, range, gender, the type of people, and then kind of come up with a composite person that would either be their current audience or their ideal audience.
Okay.
And then when we have the meeting, we can talk a little bit more about their needs. Are they good right now? Do they like it? Do they want to change what they're doing? So there's so much as far as like brand voice that you have to talk about, because so many clients, I feel like, are in that boat where they either have zero brand voice or they don't like it. They don't like where they're at.
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of where a lot of clients or brands make kind of the mistake, is they kind of have it on, like, it's automated. Like they'll have these posts that go out and they're not really a human element at all behind it. So like take for instance, like these brands that are coming out that are more like Wendy's. Wendy's is all sassy and like that's a great approach. So having this personality where you can actually talk to the brand and it's almost like they're your pal.
Person.
Like it's you can't do that. Like you couldn't do that before.
No.
So that definitely helps build brand loyalty, and I think that that's a smart play for all brands.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
so
smart.
true. I see that. I use Wendy when we do social media workshops.
We talk about that.
I always talk about Wendy's, and that Wendy's, it takes, here in Columbus, Wendy's is based here in Columbus, and so their social media process is probably more well documented in our world than maybe every other city in the world. But they, it takes a number of people to like write tweets, right? Like it has to be approved and people pay attention to it. And so Wendy's works really hard and spends a lot of money and man hours and energy on like being sassy. And so many one-person businesses or these small businesses that we work with are working so hard to sound professional and boring.
Right.
Where you're like, no, you could just easily just go post like
Just have some personality.
snarky things that you just think.
But
and
then
people will
again, I
like
mean,
you.
you have these people where it's like you're paying them because they are that way, or
Yeah.
like, and it's like if you are the brand or you are whatever it is, unless you have the personality behind it, or you can, mold yourself to fit that, it's probably not going to work. Because you also see people who try to be funny, and it's like, ooh,
It's
don't
weird.
do that.
Yeah. That's the hardest thing. We are not copywriters, and we don't do social. We help our clients as needed, but would refer people to someone like you.
Oh, and also, thank you. I did just get a referral like the other week, and we got a meeting set up.
That's
so
amazing.
thank you guys
Good.
for sure. For
We're
sending
like
that my
so
way.
happy to do that because
Well, I just want to get bigger, so you run ours. Like I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
right?
the
Yes,
most.
let's talk about that one.
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
this.
Let's document that meeting on audio. But that actually would be really interesting if people ran meetings in an interesting way.
There was a startup company that was all about open source and like transparency, and all of that stuff was like a big part of their culture. And they did when media people would be like, "Hey, can we talk to you or pick your brain?" He's like, "Yeah, but I'm doing it on. It's going to be on YouTube and it's going to be like live streamed and
That's
then
so
saved there."
interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like.
You know what? Like I feel
love
like
that.
I feel like starting out with a nonprofit, especially who, with nonprofits, you need to be transparent.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to let people know where their money's going.
Yeah.
So I feel like starting with that and sort of having that integrated into my head, where I'm like,
Yeah.
you want to be completely upfront,
Totally
because
transparent.
Yeah, because if you're trying to be authentic with your content, especially, and especially if you have so many. Not conflicts of interest, but definitely, like for me, I'm running social media for certain brands. So if I'm going to post about them on eating books, you got to know I'm running their stuff.
Yeah,
like I'm not
yeah.
going to keep that a secret at all. Because
you
if I
can't be
am,
shady.
and you find out, it's like, well, of course she's promoting them.
Yeah.
Like they're paying.
It feels
her.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like,
So-
oh man, I just accidentally love Walmart. It's so nice and the prices are so low.
Oh, they greet
And
you
they pay
every
me
day.
money. Yeah.
Yeah, like you have to be transparent,
You
and
have
not
to.
even just for the sake of them. I think it's a good
Yeah.
business practice, and it
For
reflects well on you. Yeah.
But that's our biggest struggle is finding, not just logging in for a client and being like, well, this sounds just like me. This sounds just like the Wonder Jam.
Yeah.
We had
And
like a
so-
minute where we ran someone's social and it was like, oh, this sounds like us. And they're like, oh,
Well,
it kind of like
that's the
sounds
struggle
like you.
too. Like I do balance yoga now, and I've
Yeah.
never been into yoga. I wanted to be into
Yeah.
yoga, and I've definitely.
But it's
have
not like
more of
you
an
live
interest.
there
No, and
and
there's
you're-
so much. Like I was doing it very zen like at the very beginning. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, we got to keep this like
Yeah,
chill. And she was like, we want to be more playful. Like, we wanna
Yeah.
be, so I'm still struggling a little bit because I'm still like, okay, I got to
You
work with
learn.
you,
Yeah.
and I got to figure out the voice. So I'm
Yeah.
still figuring out the voice.
Well, we're working with a client to set up their social plan, and they haven't opened yet. And so the first month was very much us saying, we actually need you to sort of take a first stab at something so we can even understand what words you use. So if you use a word that I never use, that's huge for me. Like I have to understand even how you structure your sentences, like such small things like that.
That's true.
And so I think it's so interesting also understanding that can evolve, like a brand's voice can change over time.
Yeah.
But is it intentional or is it just lazy or
right?
Weird.
And either you're going to hit it out of the park running, like that's the right brand voice for you, or you got to like, okay, assess this and be like, all right, this is not.
Well, and that makes me think, sorry, Adam, go ahead.
No, you go. I don't want to.
I like can't see your
I
mouth
love getting
or nose.
like as this is happening, I just all these couple, oh honey, you go ahead.
Are you sure? Well, I was just going to ask, do you feel like there's a brands out there that could contact you where you'd be like, this is not a good fit for me?
It hasn't happened yet, but I definitely feel like there's going to be a point because that's not true. As far as a professional capacity in which they're paying me to run their social, that hasn't happened because it seems like everyone is sort of like, and I've been able to get into industries I know nothing about.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's kind of the thing that I think about, because I try to do a lot of research. I try to talk to them as much as I can and get a feel for their business.
Yeah.
So that's important to me to make sure I'm well versed.
Yeah.
And I've had, though, as far as my influencer capacity, which I hate that word, but that's what it is, I guess. On that end, I've had people contact me where they want me to promote something on Eating Books. And if it feels right, I'll do it, sure. And most of the time, it's not for a monetary value. It's for just to try the product, and it sounds interesting to me. And I'll be like, I've had a company contact me to give me a washer and a dryer. And I was like, I cannot spin this. Pun intended.
Yeah.
I can't. Like, there's just no way I can do
unless
this.
Unless you're like straight up, I wanted this, and so.
Well, see, you know what? I kind of needed it too because I think our washer was broken at the time, and I was like, I could probably use it. But like, what does that say about me if I get this? And what am I going to do? I'm going to take a picture of a book on a dryer. Like, how
you're
is
like
this gonna
posing
work?
all cute.
Oh God, it's going to be horrible. like I'm sure if I really, really, really racked my brain, I could have done it. But I don't think that there was a way for me to get around it being
such a
like it just.
Oh, you
it
could have totally done
gross.
it.
Yeah,
you need
if
to come in here and we'll do
again,
brainstorming about angles.
Like it's funny because it's like I am open to anything. Like I even like as far as my media kit and approach and everything, even if it's not food related.
Yeah.
I'll get all these pitches where I'm like, I can make that work. Like there's fashion brands that I've worked with on stuff where I'm like, yeah, I could definitely make that work.
For sure.
And it doesn't feel false to me. As long as it doesn't feel false to myself.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't vouch for how it's going to look to someone else, but if for me it doesn't feel bad, I'll do it.
You don't have a weird feeling. Yeah.
This thing I couldn't do. I couldn't sit there and go, this is a good fit.
For sure. And
without feeling like a
and
phony.
sometimes you can't explain. It sort of goes back to even the client. Like you get that gut feeling where you're like, on paper, this seems great, but I still just feel weird about it.
Right.
And I remember thinking when I was blogging, because I blogged from like 2009 till 2016, like last year. And I was very open to getting free product. Like, sure. But there were so many times where I'm like, I can't post about Verizon.
What was the one?
I got one for like big and tall, like clothes. And I'm like 5 feet tall.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I literally have to buy like...
That's where they don't even look at your stuff.
They don't even look at your stuff. Not that you can like instantly tell that I'm so short, but you definitely can tell that I'm not.
That was just like, you're a lady. That's all we're looking for.
I also have gotten a lot of pitches to like promote jewelry, and I don't wear jewelry. So I have to just straight up say, I don't wear jewelry. So this would be the weirdest thing for me to...
But I think too, like if that's something that's known about you, and all of a sudden you're wearing these rings,
I'm
be
like, check out
Allie,
these earrings. I actually had to get my ears re-pierced now. That would be so weird.
Yeah.
Rebecca, I want to get into some of the questions.
Okay,
Sure.
go
Cool.
ahead. Yeah.
Can we call you Rebecca? Is that fine? Is that like a good name?
It's funny because
Or do you get like...
my name's Rebecca.
Yeah.
Like that's my name. In 5th grade, I started writing Becca on my paper because that was like my time where I was like, I'm going to be a new me. I'm going to And it really was like it was one of those things where I was like this big nerd. And then suddenly I was like, I'm hanging out with the cool kids now. And like the girl I hated last year is my best friend.
That's all it takes.
That's all it takes.
That's the
Drop
movie.
2 letters of your name.
It's like, what's that movie where she takes the glasses off and she's hot?
She's all that.
Yeah. It's like she's all that.
Every single
2000s movie.
But no, it's true. Like that was like my time. And
now I'm Becca.
Professionally, at some point, I was just like, Rebecca. Let's go back to
Okay.
Rebecca. So now it's back and forth. People who know me really well just call me Becca.
Okay.
But I respond to both.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. Sorry, long-winded response to
No,
that.
that's great.
That's great.
It's great to know.
I might try to change up my name, see if we
Don't
can
call
get a
me
new life
Allison.
going on.
I won't respond.
Okay.
Yeah.
We need to rebrand our names.
Yeah.
What is some of the most prevalent or widely accepted social media practices that you see being spouted out in the world that are actually not useful for small businesses? So what's common bad advice that floats around a lot?
That's kind of a hard question to answer because there are a lot of best practices that are there for a reason and that are good, and that I would agree wholly with, especially stuff that's like platform related as far as this is the best way to get the most likes, the most engagement. Like that stuff makes sense. I think going back to automating.
Yeah.
I think especially like a brand who maybe if you don't have a social media person at the helm, you're like, well, I need to be on social media. So I should, maybe if I can pay this thing where it's like automate your comments. And it's like all you're doing is writing cool, neat on everybody's posts. And you're thinking, oh, that's going to bring them back to me. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's going to make your brand look bad. Yeah. So I feel like the automation of things like that, of trying to seem human, but you're clearly not. Just that little extra effort of making sure that there's a person there is going to be beneficial. And I feel like that is usually something that is maybe bigger brands will use, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that there's this need where it's like, I need to be on social. I need to have this presence.
It would be better to just
not to even have it. Yeah, absolutely.
I wrote a post.
Okay. One of us is about to tell this story.
Like 3 weeks ago after my grandpa died. And it was like it was pretty deep and sad. And a local like org that's obviously trying to grow their engagement just wrote, nice! Exclamation point.
God.
And I was like, I'm deleting that.
That's like the word, like, and I've seen that so many times where it's like this, either a heartfelt post or like clearly a post you shouldn't be, I don't even know if I should like the post. You know what I mean?
Like, it's
like,
not
is that going to be the wrong,
positive.
like, message if I like it?
And when I got it, I remember thinking, that is so bad.
Yeah.
Like, why?
Nice.
That's like, that's definitely the biggest problem with automation.
I think I should probably contact them and be like, "Hey, I deleted your comment. This is why you shouldn't do that. You should hire Rebecca."
Here's a hint.
I'd always tell people are always like, when they write a blog post, they're like, oh, can I connect like every social thing so that everything gets pumped everywhere? Or people do that on, I just almost find every channel seems to be doing some form of an algorithm to funnel out. And
it's true.
Stuff coming from third parties is always part of what gets funneled first. So that doesn't even work that well. And it just feels like you feel like a robot.
Yeah.
And I think so much of what a small business's charm is, and like a cool thing about the local coffee shop down the street, is I see the owner or her brother working all the time. And like, that's why I like it.
Yeah.
And so don't try and pretend like
that
it's
you're like
something
everywhere.
else.
Yeah.
Well, that's also like to be said about like with Instagram, since it's essentially the biggest platform for marketers. Well, just for small businesses, but having that element of sort of a snapshot where you can show behind the scenes and it's unpolished and it's not real curated. Having that really does help bring a human element to it.
Yeah.
So when brands come to me and they're like, should we be utilizing this? You should be definitely using it. And don't think about it.
And it's not going to last forever.
No.
So who cares?
Yeah, it's going to be there for 24 hours. And if anything, it'll just get a new set of eyes looking at your account.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is that it can see the people behind your business and you can see your day to day. It doesn't have to be something directly related to the business.
Or be so stressed about photography and making it look perfect.
And if it's on the cuff and if it's honest, I think that's going to be much more resonating for your potential audience.
Yeah.
Truth. Next question. And I would be curious to hear both of your responses on this. One, so I bet a lot of people listening to this podcast, based on the type of comments or feedback that we get, are people who are at this place where they're either like part-time at some other job and they're working on their business as like a side hustle, they're trying to make a full-time thing, or maybe they're at a place where they're not big enough, the business isn't mature enough to be able to hire you at this point. If somebody has a limited amount of time, let's just make up a time, like an hour a week, or is only able to spend like a bare amount of investment somewhere, how would you tell them to engage with social media? Where would somebody get started? Saying like, I know you're not, when people hire you, obviously they're hiring you to be, pay a lot of attention, be strategic, be smart about it. And they're like, I'm spread pretty thin already as a business owner. What can I do that's just very effective in like a very small doses?
Well, the problem with that is there's no easy solution for that. There is definitely steps you can take, and there is places you can focus your energy on if you only have that kind of time.
Yeah.
The problem with social media as a whole is that because it is it's your brand voice. It's essentially one of the most important things that you can have for your brand because it's the first thing people see, especially if they don't know anything about your brand. I mean, the first thing I tend to do is find them on Twitter, find them on Instagram.
Yeah.
And if they don't have a presence there, it's just kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
so they don't do that. Like it's
feels
never
less dimensional.
Yeah, it almost feels like it doesn't legitimize your business. So having that first and foremost, obviously it's important. But again, business owners are spread thin. So sometimes there's just not the money to set aside for somebody to do that. And if you are playing this dual role where you're social media manager and you're a business owner, I mean, business owner is a full-time job. That's the main thing you should be focusing on. But because it is important, I would say that if there's really that much time, that little time in the day where it's like the one thing you need to do to focus on it, consistency is going to be the first thing. So what can you commit to every week? Even if it's not an everyday post, something where it's like, okay, 4 days a week, I will make one thing.
Yeah.
That's on your checklist, you know?
Yeah.
And then also kind of just making sure that you're keeping up with it. Like if you're not actively going out, and part of the strategy behind it obviously is interacting with the right hashtags and people and making sure that your engagement rates are up. But if that's not something you can really use as a goal because you don't have the time for it, just making sure when your presence is there, so you have a consistency and a quality to it. You don't want people to come and look at your account and it's new eyes looking at it, and the first thing they see is this crappy looking photo or you know, the last post you did was a month ago. Like there's no reason to stick around.
Yeah.
So quality content and consistency is probably the top thing. And then just kind of making sure that you're interacting with people because you want to make sure that people know your brand is there.
Yeah.
So those are the things I would say to focus on. Obviously, you're not going to see as much of an ROI on that immediately. It's not going to be as quick if you're not spending as much time on it, but it's definitely going to get you started.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, this is less connected now, but I remember blogging for years and years, and it wasn't until I really took the time to be more conversational in my writing and my posting, and this was before Instagram existed, but respond to every comment and then go to their blog or Twitter and talk to them.
Right.
Completely changed to the point where I was writing these like let's get coffee posts where people just shared about themselves and I shared about myself. I would get like hundreds of comments because I was like going and commenting on their blog.
Yeah.
Completely changed. Wasn't overnight, but I remember one year just sitting there and being like, this is awesome. Like I'm actually having real conversations and I've met these people.
Right. Like you're building a connection that's beyond just look at my stuff.
And I remember, and I hope this is encouraging to somebody who doesn't have a big audience, is that we were talking to brands at the time. So some of the brands that you would write about, just not as promoted things, just saying like, I got
like
these
I did an
pants and
Everlane post.
Yeah, like these things are cool. Those brands would reach out, and you were driving a lot more business sales revenue than other people who had gigantic followings because yours was like, this is only 100 people, but every 100, every person, every 100, every one of them listens and pays attention. And we even found you doing that, your comments became, people were like, oh my gosh, you have way more comments than a person who has, compared to how much traffic
there's
you
so
have.
much you can do now to kind of trick. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's so many things, and I feel like I have a sixth sense for it now, where I can weigh your number of followers,
to engagement.
Not even just engagement, because people
really?
can really
You can fake.
Oh, you can fake
it.
that for sure.
Yeah.
But the way you kind of notice is if it's like a person who's got like maybe like 4,000 or 5,000 followers and they've got 100 comments in every photo, like.
Yeah.
You're in a comment pod, like you are commenting on each other's things for that engagement rate. The problem is that it works.
Yeah.
It does work. It gets around the algorithm. I can't there's a part of me that's like, that's so disingenuous.
Yeah.
And you know that, and I know that, and it's like there's that level.
Working.
But it's working, and at the same time, it's like Facebook and Instagram, since they own it.
Yeah.
They are trying to get you to pay. They're trying to get you to pay for ad sponsorship. So it's sort of like, to get those eyes on your account, it's harder now than it was like a year ago with the algorithm change. So it's almost like sticking it to the man in a way. So there's a part of me that's like, all right. But then there's another part of me that's like, there's a better way to go about it. And I've got the better way to go about it. If you're going to be in a comment pod, I've tried it out. I will admit that. I tried it out just to see if it would work. And if it was a thing, it does work. Yeah. But it's the worst thing I think I've ever done. I hated doing it. You have to comment on however many people's posts.
I tried one.
I couldn't do it after
so bored.
3 weeks. I think I did it, and I was like, no, not for me.
I was very bored, and I was getting they were my peers. So like none of those people or people similar to those accounts are going to hire me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just found like maybe if I am ever going to do that again, it would be, I don't even know how this would work, but it needs to be people like my customers.
Yeah, and
not
that's,
like another
you have to
designer.
curate it yourself.
Yeah.
Like for me, I just joined one that was like in progress, and
Yeah.
I remember thinking, one, I have nothing in common with these people.
Yeah.
So I'm not looking forward to looking at their stuff
And
truth be
liking
told.
or
yeah.
commenting.
And then
Nice.
I ended up getting invited to one. I'm not in it anymore, but it was probably the better one that I tried. Is that it was maybe 7 people. It was very small, and they were all local, and they were all people I already met and liked. So it was
Yeah.
sort of like, I'm already supporting you. Like I support what you do,
Yeah.
but I'm not actively thinking about going into your account and like supporting
Now
you
I'm getting a
there. And now I
reminder.
am exactly. So that felt authentic for me because I was like, okay, so I already like what you're doing. I just maybe
Yeah.
I don't have the wherewithal every day to think about it. So
Yeah.
this is like my gentle reminder.
It's like your own list. So
Right.
if anyone's listening, I don't know how yours were set up, but basically you're in a group comment, like direct message.
Yep,
that's what we were.
yeah.
And there were probably like 10 people. You share your post to that group, and then everyone goes through and likes and comments on your post.
Right.
And so you're getting that notification every time you log in that there's like posts in that direct
Right.
message.
But it's like you have to go in and you
Yeah.
have to do
I mean,
this.
you can't be a part of the community and just be like, nah.
Right. And that's the problem too, is it's like these brands that are, the goal, I guess, is to work with a certain brand or
Yeah.
build up this reputation. And it's harder to tell sometimes. You can usually tell if it's the same exact people every
People all
time.
the time.
But even then you can't tell because some people just are like loyal
Really?
readers
Yeah.
or like
Yeah.
what you do. So it's rough. It's
I know.
rough.
If at the, I guess at the end of the day, it's still sort of like your washer and dryer like story is I didn't feel authentic.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
if anything, I'm glad I joined just to try it out because now I do get fed their stuff more often because Instagram thinks I'm interested.
Right,
And I
right.
am.
Yeah.
But it's not something that got me excited to like log into my account and do. And so
Oh,
I
no,
think,
I started to dread it.
yeah,
I
like
hated it.
I finally was like, I'm out.
Yeah,
Bye, everyone.
same.
That's what ends up happening is you probably log in and then you just start writing nice on everyone's
Yeah,
post.
that's
to be like,
yeah,
like that's
like-
how you felt. It was
Yeah,
like
'cause
this is
it-
awesome.
There's like rules where it's like you have to write at least 3 words.
Yeah.
Like,
You
like
can't
I
just
don't
write an
want to
emoji.
like yeah, and I would really take it seriously. I would I go and like I
Try
already
to be.
support you. Like I like this photo. Let's just talk about it. You know.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it's this transition for us of going from, and probably all of us is going from, this is an incredibly personal space where, like, I would hate it if my best friends and I were doing that to all help each other, because then I would be like, oh, when they told me this thing was cool, that's fake.
They actually
like,
don't
right?
think it's
like,
cool.
Right.
No, they don't think that, or they wouldn't have said anything.
Yeah.
And it would be like, oh, the people who I like the most now,
Yeah.
I don't.
It's
Yeah.
funny because I was talking about this before, where it was sort of like, what's the trajectory as far as authenticity for this kind of thing? Because it is more and more becoming a platform for advertising, and that's
Yeah.
almost like understood. It's almost like, they have these FTC guidelines now that you have to follow to make sure that your stuff is transparent and
Yeah.
people know that it's an ad. And I feel like for me especially, I don't want to make it a secret that this is a side hustle for me. I'm a
Yeah.
freelancer. This is another source of thing. I mean, I don't make
It's
a living off
portfolio.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like if I work with a certain brand or whatever, it's because I like that brand. It's because I wanted to try the product. And if I didn't like it, I would say so, or I would try and tiptoe around it as far as,
Yeah.
with the brand. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be comfortable posting this.
Yeah.
But so far, I feel like for myself, I have a certain sense of what I'm going to like.
Yeah.
So, I've gotten the product and I'm just always like, this is great. This is cool.
I thought I would, and I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you'll know, like if somebody, sends you something or pitches you something, you're going to have that moment of
You
going,
could send it back, or you
do I
have a
actually
chance.
want this? Yeah.
Yeah.
2 questions. Does that sound good?
Cool.
Cool.
I love 2 questions.
2 questions. First
Just
question.
2.
Just 2.
2. I might add an option for a third, depending on how I feel.
Great.
First question is this: in season 2, we called the theme of season 2 is below the surface. Is that there's a secret life or even secret superpowers of every business, and that small businesses tend to. There's a reason you're successful, and there's a reason people can't copy you.
I have a good answer for this.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about if someone was just following you online and just kind of trying to see what you were doing, what would be something they don't understand or that they don't realize, like, this is actually working in my favor and you might not realize it?
I don't network. I don't like doing it. I'm not comfortable doing it. If I go to a networking thing, which is inevitable. It always happens. I forget my business cards. Like I don't recommend that. You probably should bring them.
I actually always forget my
Always
business
forget.
cards.
And it's funny because I think that's good though. I think it means that my intention isn't going there to pass out my business card.
That's a good perspective.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's me being.
I saw you were recently at one of the nights we had a movie night here. Rebecca was at a Women in Digital conference, and I saw you tweeting from it saying like, oh my gosh, I'm like here and I'm like in the corner and I'm awkward. If anyone sees me, come say hi.
I don't think I said that. I think I'm pretty sure I said stay away from me if I said anything.
But you said you made a friend. You said you made one friend.
Well, it's funny because someone eventually comes up to you because they see what a loser you look like, and they're just like, oh, I'm gonna pal around with her.
Yeah.
So that was one of those, oh, poor little girl.
Yeah, but then maybe we're friends.
Yeah. But it's funny because I feel like you kind of have to go to some of these events sometimes. And I actually have a pretty cool story. When I was at the credit union that I worked at, bank, there's this national conference that they had in DC that I got to go to. So I went to DC, and it was this big networking event, like it's clearly you're meeting people in your industry. And I just did not have that bone in my body that can make me strike up a conversation about banking. Like I'm not going to talk about that. So I ended up chatting with this guy that we were just comparing our tattoos. Like we were like, oh, where'd you get that one? Like, what's that mean? And it was just like palling around being friends. And then like the course of the night goes on, and I ended up, this is going to sound a little sketch. I ended up on a penthouse roof with an overview of Washington, D.C., the sickest view I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it was me and like a bunch of other people, so I don't want to make this sound like it was me following this dude.
By myself.
Yeah, but this guy turns out to be like the president of some bank in like New York or somewhere.
That's amazing.
So he's like a big deal in the industry, and I had no clue. No clue at all. Just palled around with him, made friends, and then after the thing, he was just like, if you ever need anything, if you ever, in the city, if, stay in touch. Yeah. And it was sort of this thing where I was like, that's the approach I want. I want that. I don't want to like...
You're not like going in with his picture.
Right. Like, where's this guy? I got to get my business card. Like, that's like... And then again, it's just going back to authenticity and really liking the people you're working with. You have to kind of like... And it sucks to say, but it's like... If you don't have that kind of likability factor or you're easy to work with, that's where that interview is. You know what I mean? You could have all these credentials on paper and just blow your interview because you are... weird or awkward or whatever it is. You need to put the other person at ease. And the best way is really just to work on a human level and not this business thing. Yeah. And so for me, I don't know how it's happened. It's just things have fallen into my lap where I feel like, oh, this is cool because one time I said yes to this thing. Yeah. And I happened to meet this person who happened to know this person who happened to think of me. Like, I think that's the best approach.
And I think I find it seems to be a recurring story of when people are authentic in themselves and don't try and schmooze or make up a story to be interesting, that the things that come from that fit, and the things that come from faking it end up being not fitting.
Well, there's a lot to be said to just, liking the people you're working with. Because if I like especially with brand loyalty, if I like a brand and we've had a great relationship, this is why I like to work with brands and build a partnership so that they'll come to me in the future and I can come to them in the future. Like I'm just gonna just as a name, Hot Chicken. Yeah, I love Hot Chicken, and not just because they have great food. I love everybody behind that brand because they're such great people. Like they're everything about them feels authentic. Nothing is forced. Even the whole thing when they first started out, where it was like, you can only have a certain amount of chicken this day, so come in. It's like. That was just true. Like they didn't know how to do it. Yeah. And it's endearing as shit. I love them. Yeah. And they do so much good now. Like they do the equal opportunity employer, all of that. Yeah. So I feel like something like that where it's like you're going to build this brand loyalty just by having a good relationship.
Yeah. And you can I still support brands that I don't even get to visit or support financially all the time. Yeah. Like you can get supporters that aren't just paying customers, and I don't think people realize that.
Right.
Truth. I bet if there's people listening to this who are thinking about jumping into their own thing more, and maybe I think you can get confused if you just look at people's social media accounts all the time and the things that they're doing. But as you start to work with small businesses, often you realize there's a number of places in town who treat people poorly, and they carry that reputation around, and Hot Chicken is not one of them. No. And they're
there's a reason you haven't heard a bad word about those
people. Will argue about, I grew up my first job was at my aunt and uncle's restaurant, and we made the best fried chicken in the entire world, and I will say that forever. So people will argue about, is their chicken the best thing in the world?
I mean, it's semantics. It's like
Right.
everybody has an opinion,
Yeah.
but what
like-
kind of twists that and makes them
Yeah.
stand out is that sort of
Other
unique
Is like what they're
presence.
doing
Yeah.
and how they treat people
Right.
and how they treat their team and employees and what those employees do when they're out, when people come to our workshops.
And that's not calculated either. That's
No.
just like being a decent
Yeah.
human being,
Yeah,
you know?
and
like,
decent people hiring other decent
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. And I think it's that I would want to encourage businesses, because I know when people are starting out, there's this push to want to be savvier than you are, or like look, more calculated than you are, or any of those things. I think
Yeah.
that stuff always comes around and gets you
Yeah.
all the time.
Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking inspiration, but
Yeah.
I think there's so many people sometimes that take that a little too far and try
Yeah.
to really emulate it to the point of copying. And that's when it starts to feel like, okay, you're clearly not, this doesn't feel right.
It's not
at all.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Truth. Okay, Rebecca. First off, we offended Allie and she left
Yeah.
somehow.
We
I
made
don't
her
know what
really
we did
angry.
that was so offensive. Actually, she has a phone call that she had to get to, and we got mildly long-winded, which I can be prone to do. Question: when we do workshops for folks, we talk through social media. Often, people are overwhelmed, and there's just a number of things people say is like, this is too hard, I don't have time for this, I can't take good pictures. Like, everyone has a million excuses. Make a plea to the people who are listening to this right now why you should shut up with your excuses and just get good at social media, or hire someone to be good for you or for your brand,
Hire me.
right? Or do it themselves in a great way.
Well, actually, like I ended up teaching this class at the Columbus Metropolitan Library last week, where we had it was basically a social media in business and how to make it successful for your business. And everybody there was an aspiring business owner.
Yeah.
So it was all sorts of ideas of what you can put into practice when you have a business. And for me, it's hard because there's always one little thing that people want to nitpick at. Maybe if I just do this one thing, maybe if I post every day and that's it, maybe if I interact every day and that's it. It's this full picture that isn't being approached that kind of, for me, is like, I can tell you to do this. I can give you a list and say, do this every day, do this every week.
Yeah.
But I can't measure that ROI because I don't really know how to explain it other than the full picture.
Yeah.
You need to kind of have everything. You need to have quality photos and quality content, because it doesn't matter if you're bringing people to your business webpage or social media platforms if there's nothing there for them to see to make them want to stay. So a lot of it you'll see, and I had a friend who told me that she had paid somebody to just get them followers, like organic followers, real followers, like where they were just going around and interacting and liking and following and just getting these follow backs and things like that. But they had no content. So when these people go and they click on their account and they say, oh, this person followed me, there's nothing there.
Literally
and that
a
is
blank account.
blank account.
That's crazy.
And they got up to like 10,000 followers or something crazy like
my
that.
gosh.
And that's great because they were real people. The biggest mistake is that they had nothing for them to see.
Yeah.
So I see people do that thinking, I'll do step 1 and then I'll do step 2. And it's sort of like, you kind of got to look at this as a full multifaceted thing. You cannot approach it this way. So
I do this all the time with folks when we're going through coaching. We're talking about building email lists, and we'll often talk about how to build them. And people have like, oh, I can have this free ebook, or I can put together resources, or I can have like a video course, or there's a number of ways to get emails of your potential customers. But then they're like, but I don't want to do they don't have like a plan or even a desire to do stuff with that list as it grows.
right.
And like an email list that you don't email is basically nothing.
Right.
So like what are you doing? What do you have going on? And so I think it's one of the things that social media is the cheapest place to spend money advertising. And it's also the cheapest place to reach 1,000 people. And in an organic, there's just never been a time in human history where we can sort of mass market, but individually,
right.
And talk to people at a one-on-one.
And I think we're still kind of figuring out the best way to do this, the best approach. And there's so much like the wealth of literature online that people can just find for free if they have the time to spend. And the problem is that time factor. It's just people are like, I don't know how to do it. I either need to hire somebody or I need to learn everything I can
Yeah.
about it. And that's the only options you have.
Yeah.
That's really it. You can't go into it half-assed and then stop.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to begin a social media strategy and you're getting these eyes looking at your accounts, like that's the way I try to explain it. It's like you're not getting followers. You're getting a new set of eyes looking at your stuff. And that's what you want to keep. You want to keep them coming back. So if there's nothing there and you're not consistent and you're going to start and then stop after a month, like there's no point.
Yeah. Truth. That's crazy. I'm curious about, I'm trying to think. Is there any other social media like things floating around your brain that people should know or do poorly typically? And you would
Probably,
like to just, like,
but they're
rant about
probably
it?
so saturated
Okay.
with other
Yeah,
stuff.
right. No, that's good.
I think one of the things I would say is to explore different platforms. I think people get stuck on one, and I think I think it's a good thing to get to master one.
Yeah.
But once you do, move to another platform because your audience will move with you if you make it known that you're there. So for me, I moved from Instagram to Twitter, and now it's like those are my two main things.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so important.
When did you jump into Twitter? Like when did you?
Earlier this year.
Okay,
maybe?
cool.
Like January, February.
Yeah.
Like I really started to take it where I was like, I'm gonna do something every day, and it's great because it's just like whatever stupid thought pops in your head.
You're great on Twitter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's fun because you can just reshare things that interest you. And for me, I feel like my interests are so varied that it's like it's nice to have people that are really into food and really into books and really into politics and really into TV shows that I like.
Right.
So
Twitter's the one too where the algorithm, like, I like it the most. I like what the algorithm has done to it. My feed particularly. I know there's a bunch of people who I miss a lot of their stuff, but Instagram, I feel like I barely see anybody. Facebook, I feel like I see 12 people.
Right. Well, and for me, it's nice because with Twitter, you can really, really curate it. I have lists that are just like, these are my people. These are who I'm following, and these are who the kind of posts I like to see every day because who I want to interact with. And then I have people that are like, who interact with me a lot, and I want to support them too. So I'll add them to the list where it's like,
that's what I'm talking about.
They interact a lot with me, then that's nice. So I'll interact a lot with them.
Yeah.
And it's great because you end up making these strangers that are friends and support you, which is crazy because it's not just local. It's
Twitter's amazing.
Across the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any platforms or tools or third-party things that you have found to be helpful in like either,
Yeah, I think live stream is cool. I think that's the way to go for sure. But it's sort of like you have to see what works for you because the weird thing is that when my Twitter account is, I would say follower-wise comparable now, but when it wasn't, when it was probably like 10,000 less, I was doing live streams on Instagram stories thinking, this is where my audience is, this is what they're going to look at. And I would do it and I would notice a real peak of numbers that would quickly taper off the longer I went. So I was like, okay, I'm not retaining anybody. Granted, I don't know if I was talking about anything super interesting, but
right, yeah.
but like I would keep it pretty short. And then I realized that once I started using Periscope, which was attached to my Twitter, where then I built a Periscope audience and then it would link up to my Twitter and bring my Twitter audience, I not only retained more of a following there, I had more engagement. People seemed to keep coming in, and I found it to be more beneficial as a live stream option, just because I felt like Twitter is sort of a place that, like for me, I go to for breaking news. I go to just to talk about stuff or see what people's interests are that day. Instagram is really visual. It's just pictures. And I don't really like lingering on video on Instagram. And I wonder if that's kind of the same thing with other people.
Yeah.
So like, you're not going to Instagram to watch something live. You're going to look at pictures and scroll and like and whatever. But on Twitter, it's sort of like something can catch your eye, and then you go to Periscope, which is just for live streaming, and that's the purpose. So having this sort of concentrated thing there where it's like, oh, people are going to pay more attention because they're literally going here just to see a live stream.
Fascinating.
So I feel like having this sort of intention with what you're doing is a good way to go.
We did one of the last cookbooks we shot here. People are always curious about what that looks like behind the scenes, and we did
Oh, that's awesome.
Me and Allie, and then the Wonder Jams accounts. All of them, we did the live streaming on all the different ones, like a Facebook live video on mine, or then one of them, to see what, and it was crazy
smart.
the differences of.
Sorry.
It was crazy the differences of follower sizes or engagement in all of those.
Yeah.
What was also funny, one of a person who both you and I like, Mike Kondo, who does Ohio Chocolate.
Oh, I love him.
So Mike was like, definitely at work. You're like, it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't have named him. But he was like commented on each one. Like he's very engaged in the stuff that we're doing.
He is. And
so
he's awesome too.
He's
I would
awesome.
love to be able to I need to figure out how to get my hands on some of that chocolate because it looks amazing.
Yeah. Have you never had?
No, and
I've
see
got
it.
a surprise for you
Oh,
after we're
yeah.
done here.
Because he's been infusing like teas and stuff in
Yeah.
it. I
I've
love
got the
that.
chocolate. He did one with my coffee. That's
Awesome.
that
Oh yeah,
won-
you guys
that-
did do like
it
a
won like
partnership.
an award.
Yeah.
We did
Awesome.
it. We did a collaboration, but it mostly was just him. Like I'm doing this.
He has like a full on thing too, because I did see like behind the scenes on some of his stuff where he has like some mechanical contraption, like actually stirring this chocolate and doing stuff. I didn't realize it was like this whole thing for him.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
He's incredible. But he commented on all of them. So I was like, okay, so Mike's
Nice.
like dialed in. So live streaming is a big deal. Any like you use Hootsuite, Buffer, Schedule, anything? How do you handle that stuff?
I mean, I use Hootsuite almost exclusively. I don't dislike Buffer. I just happen to fall into Hootsuite, and that's kind of where I am.
Cool.
So, I mean, I wouldn't say there's a right or wrong. There's actually an amazing, it's just so expensive that I don't use it. But if you are maybe a bit more professional than I am, I would love to use it. It's called CoSchedule. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's gorgeous interface.
Yeah.
You can also post stuff and schedule it social media wise, where it's just built in almost to the post. Like if you're doing a blog post, you can do accompanying Twitter or Instagram, whatever. And it's just so clean and nice. God, I loved it. And
we used it for like
a month, I
2
think
months.
I did.
Yeah, and I was like,
it was
man.
beautiful, but it's just so expensive. And I was just like, I can't. But if I could afford it, I would absolutely use it.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful platform.
I do think scheduling on accounts when it's connected to blog posts and things like that, so having those places to generate content.
Right.
seems
Because
to
it
be
just
so
feeds
effective.
into itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see the other thing that people get a lot of mileage out of is building longer form content, whether that's on Medium or a blog post or a YouTube video, and then using the rest of the channels to share that. You end up sometimes people just really struggle with like, how do I come up with like 13 posts? And like if you write a blog post, you can kind of get like 8 things out of it if you are smart about it.
You just have to put the initial work in.
Yeah.
That's like
but they also can pay off it has like kind of a shelf life to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which I dig. Talk a little bit about life as an entrepreneur or one person business. What have been things that you've had to learn or like obstacles you've overcome as far as getting your own stuff going?
I think that there's a lot of naivete I think that I had to get over, which I'm not a naive person in the least. It's just as far as life goes, but being a new business and sort of just kind of relying on your own laurels here where it's like you trust what you think is right. I probably could use it like coaching and things like that. I just kind of go with what I think works or what I think is right for me. So the problem though is that it's all done by trial and error.
Right.
And so when you do that, it's absolutely worth it, of course. Like you say failures turn into positives, right?
Yeah.
Because, no one's perfect and you learn from a failure. But at the same time, it's a failure.
Right.
So for me, I've realized that there's sometimes steps you can take and all the right steps that still won't really protect you sometimes. So for instance, I worked with a company that I had actually had a year-long relationship with that I thought was well. They re-signed a new contract. And as a freelancer, I really need to have these long-term contracts in place so I know where my money's coming from for the next 6 months, for the next year. And of course I have cancellation terms, but they are cancellation terms in which they give me time to either find a new client or to make sure that I'm taken care of financially because of this missed work. Yeah. So I've had these clauses in place that I think will protect me and things, and then you'll have people who just take advantage of you. I have a company right now that owes me a lot of money, and I've hesitated taking the legal route. I'm still considering it. It's just like a problem because you go into things expecting this mutual respect and expecting sort of this just level of decency, just to say either if it's working or not. I would have no problem if a client came up to me and said, you know what, I don't think this is working. I don't think that we're a good fit. And I would say, great working with you. That's fine. Yeah. We have a contract here. These are the terms here. If you want to cancel, let's go ahead and cancel. Like if that's how you feel about it. But this is not how they went. This was a very shady thing where they changed all the passwords and then they blocked me out and did this thing where I was like, okay, you're not even telling me that you don't want to work with me anymore. And this was a company that I feel like gave off a lot of red flags because I brought in people that I trusted and was like, here's some business that you should talk to this person. And then I would get feedback from my friends going, they're the worst company. They've been so difficult. They've been this and this, all these problems pop up. But it didn't happen to me personally. So I was just like, oh, that sucks. Like, that's weird.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't think of it too long as far as our relationship, because I would think, well, maybe that's just a one-off thing. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding.
Crazy.
And then it continues to happen. And then it becomes this thing where you can't make excuses anymore.
Yeah.
So I should have known better because of all these experiences that happened with my friend that I brought in. But that's the problem too, is I put all these things in thinking I'm protecting myself, and sometimes you really can't do anything.
I think so many people learn that. Yeah. I watch so many of my friends who have their own business, and they either...
Have you seen like Clients from Hell? Like
the website?
All those stories. Yeah. Like I think after that happened, I just went on and read everything because I was so angry.
Yeah. Oh, it's hard. And it's so, I think it's just personal. Like we care, like we do this because we care, and we care about the people we work with. We want to make a difference.
Well, and that's the whole thing. Like with Ali was saying, that you guys make friends with your clients. That's kind of the precedent I want to set forward. We don't have to be friends really, but I want there to be a modicum of respect so that if there is a problem, they come to me and they don't do something like that. Yeah. And I would think that you don't have to say that, but you kind of do.
Yeah. Truth.
So.
That's the truth.
I would love not to end on that negativity.
Yeah, no. Well, I was going to say the other thing would be, I'm just so curious about, I'm curious because I know, talk about your wiring or strengths, or maybe just the way your brain works. How have you learned to leverage that, take advantage of that in either your own blog, your own work, running a business, any of those things? I think that for myself, I don't have an agenda. And I think that that's good. I think that when I do get into things, it's not because I'm thinking this is the right connection or this is what's going to happen in the future. And it's funny because I feel like it's a strength and a weakness, because I get into things because they sound fun to me, and I do them, and then either they click and resonate or they don't. And I feel like for myself too, I started a podcast like in May, and I have like interviews on my computer, but I had like technology issues that are still current that I just haven't dealt with. And I'm like, people were into it, and then I just stopped, which is bad. Like, you should continue doing this. And so for me, I'm like, this sounds fun. Let's just do it. So whether or not that's smart, whether or not that's a good thing to be doing business-wise, because there could be the capacity of people just going, not into that, don't like it. For me personally, I feel like with my brand being what it is, because it is me in a way, it's nicer to have this platform where it's like people can get a better feel for how I am as a person. So if in the podcast it's stuff that I'm talking about because I'm interested in it, it's because you're getting a better view of me behind the brand, I guess. That's cool. So I would say that my biggest strength, I guess, is just how I don't know. It's hard to put into words, I guess. I don't say yes to everything. But I definitely am not the type of person to do that. I'm a very kind of closed off person. I'm definitely more introverted than extroverted, but I'm not shy. So like I'm able to talk to people if you put me in the situation. It's just I need like a breather after that. But I think that that's a good thing because it gives me reservations. It helps to not really go into things that maybe would be a mistake because I'm just thinking I have to say yes to every opportunity that comes my way. Yeah, because it would be so easy to build. Because if you say yes to everything, I'm sure you'd get your name out and you'd get all sorts of connections and things like that. But I know myself, and I know that I would burn out so quick if I did that. It's just being honest with yourself and true to and representing that well. Just being true to such a cliche, but just being like true to yourself. Because at this point, I mean, I'm almost 30. So like at this point, I would think I know myself enough to know how I'm going to work well as far as taking my business where it needs to go. And really it's just I've built it on a platform of, I like this. Maybe you like it too. Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm going. You started with, I like the food from books. Yeah. And it's funny because you didn't know everybody was such a bibliophile. Didn't know people really liked this. Right. Yeah. And it's true. I mean, people follow you for so many varying reasons. I get people that unfollow me because I post something about books, and then I get people who unfollow me because I post about food. So like you'll get that weird level where I'm like, I do both. You're like, just trying to offend everybody slowly until you have one I'm just follower. Trying to appease everybody, but it's just not quite working at every level. So I dig it. Well, if people want to jump more into your stuff and what you're doing, eatingbooks.com is the blog. Eatingbooks.com. And then my social handle and everything is eatingbooks with zeros for the O's. With zeros for O's. Yeah. I like it.
Somebody took my name.
Dang it.
And I'm tempted to message them and go, listen, you don't do any of this. You don't eat any books. Give them.
You have eaten no books
Yeah.
this month.
And there's one on like Twitter where it's just like a dead account. And I'm like, come on, get rid of that one. It's mine.
That's wild. Thanks for coming and hanging with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And I'm excited to share.
If you are still listening, is because you are a super fan and we should send you a package in the mail. So thank you for listening to the whole episode.
So you get mail. If Allie likes you, she's mailing you
love
things.
sending mail.
Today she sent 6 packages in the mail to people because she wanted to.
Yeah, why not? Who doesn't love getting snail mail?
So we're at the point of this episode where we should have a jingle by now, but we probably don't. And so
We're jingleless.
we have no jingle. Someone send us a jingle.
But it is where we answer listener questions.
Yeah.
And today's question is actually from Brian and Catherine from Beginning in the Middle or Mixed Design Collective, however you may know them. Or the Village Host. They have many businesses. They've made this room that we're sitting in that we call the Magic Room, and it's beautiful. But they asked, how do you know when you're ready to hire someone full time?
That is a great question. One that we have some experience in, but not as much as we probably wish we had.
So let's clarify a little bit, because when I first read that question, these were the first things I thought. I think that you know that it's time to hire. I don't know what full-time means to you, but hire.
Oh, that's a good point.
When you are working too much, you feel like maybe you're doing the work of 2 full-time jobs. And your cash flow says that it's possible because you should have an idea of money coming in and out and what feels comfortable and safe. But for us, hiring full-time means different. It's different than a full-blown agency. Only because sometimes we get contractors who work specifically with us full-time who get paid the amount that they need to make to have a comfortable life. But we aren't at a place where we're paying benefits and full salary.
Correct.
So, someone spending full time of like the full amount of their time here, but it looks different than if you worked for a corporation.
Yeah, and it looks different from the business owner's perspective. It looks different in our books than it does for someone else's books. So everyone's going to be different with that. I think the 2 things I would ask yourself is you should hire somebody if it will free up your time to do a better thing of whatever you want to do.
More money, yeah.
Or you should hire somebody if it will help your company or your business help its clients better, if that makes sense. And so most of the people that we work with are small businesses who adding an employee or a salary is a pretty big step in their finances, in that it's like exponentially changing their math.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to think through, how sustainable is that? Are you 100% certain that you can do that? In our past episode, we talked to Kate Finley, and she has kind of really done a great job of thinking through all of that and managing her team and her business and the finances in a smart way. And we've watched other people really overextend themselves and bringing people on, promising people growth that doesn't happen. And so you got to think about all of that. One of the exercises I have people do as they go through coaching is I always have them, or I often have them when they're debating this problem, is carry around a 3x5 note card with them and write down the things that they're doing in a given day. Or if you find yourself spending 3 or 4 hours going through tasks that you don't need to be doing that somebody else could do, write down what all of those are and figure out how much time you're actually spending for that. Our business finance coach, Mike, always says that a lot of times people think they want to hire somebody full-time, but they don't really have if somebody came in that wouldn't be full-time hours.
Yeah.
So someone's like, I should hire someone to help me with my marketing. You might be able to hire somebody to help you with your marketing in like 15 hours a week.
Yeah.
Or
Which is the idea of full time someone else's time is completely unique. So a 30-hour a week job feels full time to them because of what else is on their plate.
Yeah. And so for us, when we didn't know what we were doing, we have interns come in, and we knew that we could provide them with experience, but we weren't quite sure what the structure or nature of our business was going to be. And so interns were a really good way for us to kind of experiment with all of that. Part of that was that we tried to treat interns like employees as much as we could.
Yeah.
Give them real responsibility, really try and manage their time, really try and develop them, not just have them
Do things.
staple papers together all day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of this, unless you have a plan and your business can handle screwing up,
Yeah.
then you kind of just need to practice.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And dip your toes in. Like, I forget who we were talking about, but a lot of people, even Rebecca today talking about trial periods.
Yeah.
And I know people who treat full-time or part-time positions the same way.
Yeah.
As an employer, give it a trial period. I know that Kate does that too. So,
yeah. So your math, it needs to make sure that it works with your math, and make sure that you can be good at it. And that might require you practicing a little bit.
Yeah,
It's going to be.
Yeah, leading requires, being a boss takes time. And I think we were told once, like add 5 hours a week per person to your day. And so if you have, 3 people working for you, that's a decent amount of your week that's dedicated to managing and leading. So tread lightly in the most friendly way.
Tread lightly in the most friendly way. That's a t-shirt.
Thanks for asking, Brian and Catherine.
Love it.